The doctors say I have to keep a journal. They say the surgery is going to make me a better filmmaker. I hope so. I just filmed the first episode of John Gets Lit, and it could be better. It's blurry, the sound is only okay, and there's music in the background that I don't have the rights to. Wouldn't it be great if I can make real good videos? Shoot, I'd be happy even if they were just alright.
Every time I do an episode of John Gets Lit, I try to find a location that has something to do with the book. So here we are at Chuck E. Cheese. No, we're at Rice University to have a conversation about Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Keyes. The university seems fitting because it's a book about intelligence, education. He also spends time at a university and studies and research and stuff like that. So I guess the thing that we should start with to help hook people into the book is to just describe a synopsis or a plot without giving away any spoilers, which I think is kind of weird with this book because I think the most interesting thing about this book is the concept.
Yes.
So just explain the concept. What is the concept of this book?
The whole idea basically is, it has to do with our intelligence and perceptions of intelligence. So the whole idea of playing God to either make ourselves more intelligent or really what that means in the greater sense of it. And so sometimes is our happiness linked to how much we know versus...
Well, I think that's even getting, I mean, that's good. That's getting deeper than we should start. I think we should start with this, which is what is the concept of the book? Like Daniel Keyes sets out, what is he writing here? What is this book?
He's writing a book about an intellectually disabled guy, Charlie. And the guy wants to become better, wants to become smarter, and then he introduces science into it, which makes it a sci-fi. To kind of help us explore the idea of what happens when science kind of hops into intelligence.
Yeah, I definitely think so. Well, and what I think is the most interesting about this book, and what, like, even before you know anything else about it, what gets me is the idea behind, like, the way the book is structured. Like, so it's first person right, narrative, and it's Charlie, and like you said, he's intellectually disabled. So they have him writing in this journal as part of this scientific study. And it starts off as an intellectually disabled person. So it's the sentence structure is very simple. Things are misspelled. Daniel Keyes is like adopting the writing styles of someone with that, with that disability. And then as the science gets introduced, which is basically, I mean, what they give him pills, but they also do a surgery, right?
They do a surgery.
Yeah.
And that's the main portion of it, actually, is they like do this massive surgery to make him. Am I allowed to okay.
Whatever,
to make him a genius.
Yeah. I don't think that spoils the book, though. You know what I'm saying? I think the idea. I think the idea is it's the premise. That's the word I'm trying to get to.
Okay, sorry, you were confusing me.
So the premise.
Are we going into a theme here? Or,
exactly. So the premise, is that you've got this guy who's intellectually disabled. What if we could take somebody and through science, through surgery and medication or whatever, psychology, they even have some of that in there.
They do.
Make him intelligent, increase his IQ, like his, what would that do to a person? Or that's what the book really gets into, and that's what we can spoil nuggets of that if we want.
And I think it really touches on what we perceive to be human, and a lot of times our intelligence is linked to humanity.
Yes.
But then
that's one of the most tragic parts of the book.
Yes. And then I think the irony is humanity kind of leaves us when we become too intelligent. And so we link intelligence to humanity, but in the end, the more intelligent you are, you lose the humanistic portion of yourselves.
I don't know. There are some authors who don't write many books, or they have one book that's like lauded, and I feel like Daniel Keyes, Flowers for Algernon, this is one of those examples. And you might call it a one-hit wonder, but I don't even feel that way. I think that this is like the book he was born or raised to write.
Well, actually, I think this was, I think if I'm remembering correctly, this might have been his very first novel.
I think maybe.
It started out as a short story,
Yes.
I know, and he wrote that in the late 50s, like
Yes.
58, 59. But then the more he thought about it, he thought that this topic and all the themes involved, it deserved a greater story.
There's so much like
So.
expertise and like personal touches to this book that I feel like, yeah, it's something he couldn't escape. Like it was like,
Right.
I've got to just make this.
Yeah,
It's bigger than a short story.
It also came in right at a perfect time in the 60s too,
Mm-hmm.
you know, when we're doing like all of the human rights movements, and you know, then
And
it kind of brings in
humanity.
another aspect to
Yeah.
it. And so I don't know, I thought it was really well done. It's also kind of funny based on like his background with comic books.
Yes.
He actually worked with Stan Lee. He worked
Yeah.
under Stan Lee when I think it was
Before.
called Atlas Comics.
Yeah, it was before
Something
Marvel
like
is what I
that.
was reading too.
Yeah. So pretty interesting stuff to like explore.
Yeah, and so let's talk about him then. Daniel Keyes, his background, again, it feels like it's so much a part of the book because I also was reading that he had like a troubled relationship with his mother, and that his mother was trying to force him to be an intellectual, go to college and become a lawyer or a doctor. I can't remember what. But either way.
Yeah, either way, some other kind of professional.
And he wanted to write, and he, you know, went and became a part of Atlas Comics or whatever, and then eventually published his book. And then eventually after that becomes like an English professor or whatever at a college.
Yeah, and
So-
he did his bachelor's in psychology.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of fun that plays into all of this too.
Right. And I think that, especially in the character of the mother, like it feels like Daniel Keyes is just complaining about his mom in the book, which again, I don't take away anything. That's not the only takeaway from the book. It is an amazing book. I listened to it. This is the second time I've listened to it. And I think this time I think it's better than before. Like it just feels like a perfect book to me. Charlie, the intellectually disabled main character, who is writing the journals this entire time.
Right.
His mom is brutal, and as he's remembering things about his past, she is a character that brings him only pain, and you don't really sympathize with her too much, except that, you know, as a teacher,
Right.
and he was also Daniel Keyes was
Right.
also a teacher of
Right.
intellectually disabled students. So I think that also puts him in a unique position to write this book.
Right, because he's able to see both sides.
He's worked with those kids. And I think that's why he saw humanity and also could see the difference between the way that they were talked about and treated by probably staff that he worked with.
Right.
But that he also worked with parents of these kids. And there are definitely parents of kids that have these disabilities
Right.
that see them a certain way or refuse to see them a certain way. And that can be harmful to those kids.
Absolutely. Well, and see, that's the thing is like, you know, we all have these hopes and dreams for our kids.
Yes.
And no matter who you are,
Yes.
you have those hopes and dreams.
Yeah.
And so with the mom, especially back then,
Yeah.
she received this child, but she had no idea what was going on. Usually now we have like indicators and the blood samples and everything else that we take in utero, but she had no indicators. And so this whole time, she's actually like driving herself crazy.
Yes.
Because trying to see what's wrong with her son, and then somehow feeling like that plays into her failure as a mother.
True.
And she's trying to like
So-
push him into being what she perceives will be a normal child, a good child. But in a way,
So are you more sympathetic to the mother with that
is that
perspective?
odd?
No, I was a little more sympathetic this time. Reading it again, I was like, man, this woman is horrible. Like, but then it got to the end, close to the end, whenever he goes and visits her.
Right.
And she has dementia, and you know, there's sort of a little bit of poetic, you know,
Yes.
there's irony to that.
Yes, I thought so too.
And that's really well done. But then also there's a part where she gets out of her dementia and she has an honest conversation with him for a little bit. And one of the things she says was, you know, about, I want to say that she talks about, you know, wanting him to get married and wanting him to graduate and stuff like that. And at that point, that's when I cried. I cried the second time I read the book. And it was funny because that's the character I hated the most. And she made me cry because I thought about Eleanor and I thought about Jack, my kids, and I thought, wow, I see those things. And if I did have a kid who was intellectually disabled, how would I be able to? You can't do that to that. It's wrong to do that to that kid too, though.
Right.
You know,
Right.
it's selfish, but also it's human to feel that way.
See, and I think that's the thing that like the book, and that's maybe why I felt sympathetic for the mother, because I feel like she never was even encouraged. So I feel like nowadays, especially, we have support
It was
systems.
the 60s. It was the 60s.
Yeah,
right?
so we suppress, we hide, we shove away in a home.
Yeah.
Like for instance, my dad was telling me when he went to school, they didn't see intellectually disabled kids or autistic kids.
Separate,
they were kept separate. And so I think that the school systems do a good job now of at least making that something where like it helps build human empathy, where you see that there are different people.
They're not an other.
Exactly, they're not an other. They're still human.
Yeah.
And so that's another really theme that we explore. Like, did the intelligence make Charlie? Of course not. He was a human being before.
Yes. But a lot of the characters see him as a test subject whenever he wasn't intelligent, and then when he becomes intelligent, they start to finally see him as an equal.
Yep.
And then when he surpasses their intelligence,
they're threatened.
They're threatened,
and
he starts to see them as less than. He starts to not
push away.
And
the whole point at the very beginning was he kept saying, "I want to get smart so I can have friends."
Yeah.
But he had way more friends when he wasn't.
Right.
It's interesting. Anyways, but back to the mom. I feel like her husband was the only person saying, let Charlie be. And of course that broke apart the marriage. And so of course you love the husband.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they should have been like getting a support group, learning how to grieve the loss of what
wasn't
you
a thing back
thought.
then.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so the mom didn't know how to grieve the loss.
Especially not for a
of
low-income family, which they're sort of kind of that, right?
And then they just wasted, and any money they did have was just thrown straight into this hope and a dream of making Charlie normal.
Yeah.
Even including, God, what was that, electroshock or something like that?
Some kind of, yes.
That's crazy, which nowadays we would never, ever say, say or do anything like that. The man who showed the most compassion to Charlie as a human being was the man who was trying to fix him, the physician.
Yeah.
He was the one who was telling them, like, Charlie B, he will get better, and maybe he will get better. And so he kind of treated him as a not other, as not less than human. He treated him as a human being.
Right.
I guess, and who believed in his own practice. I don't know about that one. That one's kind of weird.
He was sort
of
trying
an interesting.
He was sort of trying to help him, it seemed like through therapy, kind of. Like he was talking to him and he was saying, you are smart, you are good, and all that kind of stuff. And then he went to the parents and the mom who beats Charlie for wetting himself.
See, and that's where my hate for the mother comes in.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, she was kind of built to be that character. But, it was in the 60s where we saw those swings.
So that's one question I wanted to ask you is female characters and the way that they're treated in this book. What do you think about that? Because, like I said, I feel like Daniel Keyes is taking it out on his real mom a little bit with the female character, and then but I do feel like some of the female characters are done well. But I'm a man. I don't. Maybe I'm wrong.
I want to touch on Alice.
There's Faye and there's Alice.
All right, so there's Faye and there's Alice. And of course, basically, they are literally only there to help Charlie explore his sexuality.
Okay. Faye becomes his neighbor whenever he's smarter and on his own, and Alice is his teacher.
Alice was his teacher, who, as he grew up and started so what we saw also
not his teacher when he was a kid.
No.
Yeah, his teacher, as an intellectually disabled adult.
Yeah. So what I think was interesting with the whole Alice thing is, it kind of happened like what happens in school. You get that school kid crush as you start exploring the idea of sexuality, but you don't know what it is. Anyways, and so they continue that with Alice, with Charlie, but we're seeing the asynchronous development. So I thought it was funny in the book they mentioned that on the high and the low end, the child is classified as exceptional, and that's actually still kind of a thing. If you're gifted and talented, they still classify you as exceptional, and I think it still happens with the intellectually. And then of course he made his little side comment about, and once that starts meaning something, we'll change the meaning. And I thought that was kind of
they do. Intriguing. He does. Daniel Keyes through the characters also kind of knocks intellectualism a little bit, and academia and that kind of thing.
Yes.
And sort of saying that these people who know everything don't really know everything.
Right.
They think they know everything, but they don't.
Right.
And
they're missing. They're lacking. They're still without.
Yeah. Well, because intelligence is all they care about, they're going to be lacking.
I think even somewhere in the book, he ends up making this hypothesis that, like he said, in the new hypothesis is this, and I remember I highlighted it. Basically, you can have all the intelligence in the world, but it means jack, zero, nothing if you don't have love to go along with it.
Sure.
And so that's what we did explore with the female characters. There was, so as he's developing, his intelligence would be up here, but remember, emotionally, he was still here, and that would even happen with some of our gifted students.
Yeah,
they would be the smartest kid in the room, but the most immature kid in the room.
Cry at the drop of a hat or whatever.
Yeah, that's actually a thing. It's asynchronous development, and so we saw that in Charlie as well. But with our female characters, we use them to explore his growth emotionally.
Yeah.
And so, like, for instance, he is first able to, like, be with Faye.
Yes. Because why? I never quite...
Okay.
I mean, he explains it as that there wasn't necessarily as much of an emotional connection.
Right.
That's the reason?
I don't know what Daniel Keyes was trying to throw in with this. And maybe it was,
with Faye, he can become intimate without much problems, but with Alice, he tries to become intimate, and he sees his former self. Yes. He would see, like, literally see a phantom of his mentally disabled Charlie, and
watching, like, as a
and
voyeur.
could not do it, because there's somebody watching, and it's creepy.
And so with Faye, he was able to disconnect emotionally, which I think, like, you know, Daniel Keyes was trying to maybe say that, like, in the exploration of sexuality, it's not fully fulfilling emotionally without, like, you know, and so anyway, so he was able to just, like, do the deed with Faye and get that over with. It almost, like, was treated like an over with kind of thing. And then, and only when he was emotionally ready could he connect with Alice.
That kind of was
and
how
sex became important.
I think that's also how virginity was even seen back then, though, is like,
that's what I'm thinking.
Like, now there's more of a steer of, like, make sure it's with someone you love. And I think back then it was almost like, get it out of the way. Get it out of the way with whoever.
Actually, I kind of remember that, like, and maybe it was because of movies and TV, it kind of being treated that way as a kid. Yeah. And I remember thinking, like, how odd. How odd. You know, but I was also kind of an odd kid. Yeah. And so, anyways, but yeah, so they just kind of, like, treated it off to the side when really I feel like it should have been with Alice.
Now that's
he
the
could
prevailing
love and learn.
perspective.
And exactly. And so I think that they might have treated it differently now, but also we're talking about the free love, sexual exploration phase
60s,
of the nation.
Yeah.
And so he just went and sowed his wild oats with Faye, and then he could only enjoy a full relationship with Alice.
Yeah.
They were tools to carry along the plot. And not in an awful way, but
not too terribly.
You didn't get to explore much of their background.
They do feel three-dimensional.
Yes.
They do feel three-dimensional a little bit, no?
A little bit. Faye, not so much.
Alice
to
has
me.
opinions and this
yes,
and that.
Alice has opinions. I feel like they didn't get to, but then again, it would have been a much longer book if we would have went into the backstory. Mostly, as we said, it is through a first-person narrative.
Yes.
And so, yeah, it makes more sense to me that Charlie's not going to be able to go into her thoughts and emotions and everything else that's going with it because it's being told through Charlie's perspective.
Yeah.
And so I could see how watching Charlie's development, those women are only going to be like love interests for him because it's through his eyes.
That's true.
And so we're not going to get to see too much of...
And women are objects to men. To some men.
Well, I mean, yeah, and I guess it vice versa.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah.
I just went and saw the Avengers and like heard women like visibly go, oh, when Chris Hemsworth like came out and had the dad bod.
Yes.
You know, like, well, now I'm not here to watch this movie.
What is the part for you that is unforgettable, or the part that, like, is it just the concept or the themes, or is there an actual part that you can remember?
You know, I think, like, honestly, the reason why I really liked the idea of us going to the university is I really enjoyed, like, Charlie looking at what he wanted to be his future. He would come and sit at the university all the time as an adult, as a grown man, and he would look at the college kids not even understanding what they were really doing there, but wanting somehow to have that because they looked like they had so many friends. And then in the end, he ends up being the loneliest here, and for some reason that image just stuck with me. But also how you see his progression, like, you know, at a university. Whereas when he would listen to the college kids when he first became smart, he thought they sounded amazing. But then by the time he was super smart, he was like, oh, it sounds so juvenile. Mm-hmm. Which, you know, we've all kind of experienced that moment where we hear...
As you age.
Yeah, as you age. And so, you know, I thought that was kind of, I don't know, it for some reason that sticks out to me is the progression of, oh, and also... You know, how in the end he almost becomes like his mother.
Sure.
You know, he has those moments where he ends up having the same neuroses his mother has.
Yeah, about himself.
About himself.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it was just, and then his mother, you know, ends up being a little bit more like him. And so I don't know if there's a particular part. It's the whole premise. Like, there were so many things touched
it's done
on.
Well.
Yes, like we talk about, like, playing God. We talk about loneliness. We talk about love. We talk about humanity.
Intelligence,
you know, and
happiness.
Yes, like there's so many things that are touched upon in just one book.
Yeah. And well.
Yeah, and well.
It's not a hodgepodge. It feels very well done narratively.
Yes. And so it's hard to pick out a moment. Like, you know, and even I think by the time like you even get to like the softer moments, like the love story or the, you know, like it's still hard to pick out one moment because we watch the progression of a human, like a grown man from childlike intelligence to genius intelligence in just a couple months.
Right.
You know, and so we almost essentially watch a lifetime in a couple months, so it's hard to just pick out one moment in a lifetime, right?
And we're leaving the ending out to not spoil it, but
it's pretty good though.
But the way it ends is also just one of my favorite things. It ends very well, and
it's a beautiful roller coaster.
It is. So how do I want to close it out? Well, I asked every guest if I've done my best, or if we've done our best. And I mean, we knocked it out of the park, I think.
Yeah.
This is really good.
Yeah, knocked it out of the park.
You know, I think my videos, you know, they start off not that great, and they've gotten better. But this one was
what you
peak.
did there.
Yeah, this one's peak. I think this is. This is, I think this is where we're starting to get cynical now, where I'm looking at other YouTube videos and I'm like, these aren't that good, because now mine are at that point. You know what I mean?
I really like what you're doing.
I'm at the high IQ Charlie at this point.
Yeah, high IQ Charlie. But you know, like you said.
So are we there? Is that where we're at? High IQ Charlie?
Oh, I think we're at fell in love with Alice the first time Charlie.
Okay, that's nice. That's a good spot to be.
I think that's a good line.
So I've got room to grow.
Yeah, we've got room to grow.
And become more cynical.
As long as it doesn't get too dark, Jonathan, you're doing a great job.
All right. Thank you, Heather. Thank you so much for
it was a lot of fun, Jonathan.
Joining me and talking about the book. Okay.
What was that, electroshock or something like
Some
that?
kind of, yes.
That's crazy, which nowadays we would never, ever say, you know, say or do anything like that.
Right.
But the funny part is the guy who treated Charlie as an
therapy's
the doctor. No, stop it. The doctor who...
Well, it's still, mine has me.
Oh.